Hi, Uncle. Hello.
Hi, doctor. How are you?
Fine, thank you. You're very punctual, eh? On time, eh?
Yeah, I'm always early to classes, doctor. I don't want to be late.
Ah, okay, that's great.
Hello, Doctor and Uncle.
Hi, Nancy.
Hi, Nancy. Hey, where are the other guys?
I don't know, doctor.
Was there an exam?
Not that I'm aware of, doctor, no.
Oh, okay.
Doctor, I see Troy just sent a message saying that he's got internet difficulties and he's asking to be excused from class. He doesn't have access to the internet at the moment.
Who is requesting to be excused?
Troy, doctor.
Troy, eh?
Yeah.
Okay. We give them 3 more minutes. Geoffrey, hi. Justus, Nancy, how are you?
Hi, Doctor. All good and you?
Thanks. Kindly inform your colleagues to join, eh?
Yes, doctor.
How are you?
I'm fine, doctor. And you?
Fine, thanks. Is there a blackout in Uganda?
Doctor, I'm in South Africa.
Oh, yeah, you are in South Africa.
Yes, doctor.
Where are the others? Please let them join.
Let me first try to reach out.
Doctor, if I'm not mistaken, is this class not usually at 4 to 6?
4 to 7.
4 to 7.
No, not 4, 3, eh?
Yeah.
3, that is South African time, eh?
Okay.
3 to 6. The time difference sometimes confuses, eh?
Recording.
So I think we can begin.
Yes, doctor.
In the interest of time, so that we don't wait for the others. So. So let me share the PowerPoint presentation. So are we there?
Yes, doctor.
Yes, good afternoon all.
Good afternoon,
So I
Doctor.
think we'll move to our next topic, that is inventory management and logistics. Hi. So because of time, we are not going to wait for the rest to join. They will catch up with us. So today, we want to discuss on inventory management and logistics. So, before we move or we begin the discussion, normally there are two terms that are confusing. That is inventory and stock. So we need to clearly define those two terms, inventory and stock. So what is the difference between inventory and stock? Normally they are used interchangeably, but is there a clear-cut difference between inventory and stock? Hello?
Doctor, in terms of the accounting definitions, inventory is normally used when you have a system that continuously updates how much of your product you have on hand or how much you have sold, as compared to stock is normally when you run systems such as that you do stock takes every 3 or every 6 months, depending on your system in that way.
So what does it include? Is it finished goods or work in progress, raw materials?
Doctor, can I give a try?
Yes.
With the inventory, I think inventory comprises both the raw materials and then the finished goods. Because when you look at stock is purely you're supplying goods that are finished for purposes of sale.
Yes, so stock basically includes the finished goods, and other than finished goods, it also include other assets, which of course can be used by a business. But basically the items have gone through, production, and now they are complete. But for inventory, it is a resource which, of course, has got some economical value. And it is maintained within the farm to fulfill both the present and the future needs of that farm. So it may also include those materials which have not been processed or are yet to be go through the processing stages. So, but many a times you find that people use the terms interchangeably, inventory, stock. So when you talk about inventory management and logistics, we are concerned about the inventory and even the stocks because you want to have the right amount of stock in the right time and place. And you need to ask yourself many questions as a business person or as a firm. How many units do you want to hold in place? And when do you place orders? Because you need to strike a balance between the amount of units that you hold in stock and whatever you order, so that you do not have the excesses at any given time, or customers do not lack these goods when they demand for them. So normally it is not an easy task to try and strike a balance, and especially if you do not have the right information. Are we clear on that?
Yes, doctor.
Yes. So I've said that inventory is any kind of resource which has economic value, and it is maintained to fulfill the present and the future needs of an organization, and it could include the physical resources such as the raw materials, semi-finished goods, and so on and so forth, including other resources, not necessarily the ones that are being, processed. So it is important as a firm or as a business to be able to manage this inventory effectively, because that is what will determine the success of your business. And as I mentioned, sometimes if there is excess stock, then you may incur other costs, such as the storage costs, maintenance costs, and many other costs. But again, if you do not have enough products or enough stock, sometimes you may end up, underserving your customers. So you should have enough to be able to supply your customers, and you should maintain just what you need without really having excesses. So, and that could also lead to efficiencies within the chain, because at the end of the day, you must ensure that you are efficient on how you manage these inventories and even the logistics. So normally the rule of thumb is that you keep inventory that is just at a bare minimum. A bare minimum. Do not have extra or less, but what is enough for your customers, because you want to also keep the costs a bit low. So you look at the inventory investment. If you have the extra inventory, how much will you invest in maintaining the inventory in stock, or even ensuring that they do not, of course, become obsolete? So companies need to manage all these. So if you look at these, of course, we have got different players here who are involved in managing the inventory. We have the suppliers, the manufacturers, the distributors, the retailers. And you find that at the different stage, they must be in possession of some inventories or even stock. So, and each stage must be able to possess the right information that they can transmit to the other parties. Because if the information flow is poor, again, that can lead to some problems which will be discussed in a few minutes. So there must be a trade-off in inventory management at any stage, so that the inventory maintained is just at a bare minimum. But at the same time, they must ensure that they provide sufficient inventories to ensure that customers get the best services. Are we together? So these inventories will flow across the chain, right from the suppliers to the manufacturers, to the distributors, until they get to the customers. So the manufacturers, they must have the raw materials and work in progress to ensure the flow of activities and maintain, the flow of activities within the farm. So you'll find that at any given time, they have got those different kinds of inventories. They could be having raw materials. You find that there's work that is just about to be completed. you'll find other products have been worked on and ready for distribution. Because assuming that they have only finished goods, but there is no work in progress and raw materials, what will happen? What's likely to happen? Hello? Assuming that in a farm, a manufacturing farm, the only inventory available is they have finished goods, but no raw materials and work in progress. What will be an ideal situation?
Doctor, I think, sorry.
Yes?
Okay, I thought someone else was speaking. Yeah, because this, the supply chain is supposed to be continuous. So if a farm has only finished goods, that implies that there are high chances that they will miss out either on the supply at a certain point. For example, when the finished goods are all sold out, and then you didn't have goods that were in progress or work that was in progress, that means there will be that gap that you'll not be able to cover on time.
Yes. So to keep this production facility going and to ensure that there is that continuous supply of products, then they must have those in place, the raw materials and even the work, in progress that is yet to be completed, so that the cycle continues. So at any given time, there is continuous supply of goods to the customers. And by doing so, they will also ensure that they achieve effectiveness. So as companies or firms, they need to manage these upstream supply exchanges and the downstream to ensure that there's a balance between, demand and supply. So if there is no balance, then the supply chain might experience some challenges or problems. So what are the trade-offs in inventory management? We find that managers who are responsible for inventory control, they are normally under a lot of pressure because they want to strike a balance between all those. They want to increase sales. They want to, increase profits, improve productivity, and all that. But then at the same time, they want to provide sufficient inventories to assure high customer, level service, because customers must receive quality services. They must be provided with the right products at the right time and in the right form. So how do they then strike a balance? But then if the inventories are properly managed, then they can be able to resolve to all those. A properly managed inventory can help in improving productivity, increasing, service levels, and that will translate into sales and profits. But it is not easy to strike a balance between what should be maintained, what needs to be ordered, and what is released to the customers. So how do you think they can be able to strike this balance? How can they strike a balance?
Doctor, I would think, I'm not really sure, but I would think there is need to balance. For example, you study your market or study the season. and then you look at also the demand so that you don't overproduce, then you also don't underproduce.
So they need to study the market.
And also the seasons, because there are some products that are seasonal. So that means they'll be demanded highly in some periods and less in other periods. So I think you need to study the market and maybe the demand. And
so they need to study the market. They should possess the right information. And that means, data is very important. Record keeping, as companies, as firms, do they have their records? And they are able to analyze, the trend in terms of the orders placed, in terms of the demands, and so on and so forth. How else do you think they're able to strike a balance between all these?
Doctor, even securing raw materials from cheaper sources in case there are options for securing at a cheaper price.
So they need to compare the prices across.
Yes, doctor.
Yes, so they need to compare the prices for different suppliers, and of course, they must consider the price, and not only the price, but even the quality. Because if they were to satisfy the customer needs, they must also factor in quality. But then what are some of the drawbacks or dangers of having too much inventory in place? What is the danger of having too much inventory in place? Because as they trade off inventory, they must ensure that they maintain what is necessary, but then at the same time, they must provide sufficient inventory that can, meet customer needs. So they must take care of customer service. So what are the drawbacks of having extra inventory?
Doctor, there's what we call the costs that are charged. For example, if maybe an organization does not have a storage place, and even if it had, still under financial management, there are always costs levied on storage for inventory. So I think they will incur that cost, and also they tie up capital that would be invested elsewhere, still in inventory.
Yes, so of course they will spend extra finances on the storage. And, while goods are on store, they must also take care of those goods. Other than that, that money ought to have been spent elsewhere, but it's now tied up. So instead of having used it elsewhere, but the stock, ties up the finances. So it is very costly at the end of the day, to have the extra inventory. Also spoilage, they deteriorate in value. So, and when they deteriorate in value, it means even the price value might go down. So at the point of sale, you may have to price them lower than expected. Some of them even become obsolete. What do you think? Sometimes they even become obsolete depending on the nature of the products or goods that are on offer. So therefore, it is important that a firm just maintains bare minimum, but at the same time must provide sufficient inventories to assure high levels of customer service. But if they are able to maintain or manage inventory properly, then they are able to improve productivity. They are able to ensure that the services are top-notch. Sales will increase, and if sales increase, definitely the profits will also go up. Sorry. So how many of you have come across this challenge, the bullwhip effect? Bullwhip effect. I remember I mentioned it sometimes back. What is it all about, or how does it occur? Bullwhip, who can tell us what is a bullwhip effect and what causes it?
Doctor, a simplified version of the bullwhip effect in my eyes is that changes in the supply will end up having a change for the realtor, in essence, your end, as well as your end consumer. So whether that be the price of, let's say, fertilizer has to go up for a farmer, it will then make the crop they are growing more expensive further down the line for the consumer.
Mhm. So normally it occurs because of the demand order variabilities along the supply chain. And it is amplified as you move up the supply chain. And this effect normally occurs when information is distorted from one end of the supply chain to the other end of the chain. So there are inefficiencies. These actors do not get the right information. So sometimes you place an order and on the ground, the demand has changed. And yet you are not aware that the demand has changed and an order had been placed earlier on. So they must be alert to be able to possess the right information and also ensure that as the demand order changes, they are, of course, informed of these changes. So what are some of the causes of these other than the distortion of information? What are some of the causes of the bullwhip effect?
Doctor, I also think change in prices of a commodity can affect. Okay, for example, if let us say you're buying sugar at a certain, maybe let us say 6,000, and then out of the blue, like it increases to 10,000. There is likely that the demand of such a product will lower down, will get less than it has been.
So sudden changes of prices. So initially the price was at 6,000, and then along the way it changes, and maybe an order had been placed, because once the price change, it means that the demand may likely to change. What else?
Doctor, I also think factors that contribute to the bullwhip effect is, for example, when companies run promotions on topics, because it will then boost, for example, demand on the supply on the consumer side, which will send a ripple effect through, because now all of a sudden all of the stock disappears. So now there's large and immediate demand growing throughout all of the value chain and supply chain, because now people need to scramble to get more things together so they can capitalize on this increase on demand. So that will also send a bullwhip effect throughout a value chain. I think also other things that can cause a bullwhip effect is, for example, the lack of communication and coordination. I mean, we've been speaking quite a long time about implementation of technologies, that assist in traceability and so on, but it's not necessarily just for traceability at the end of it. It's to help better coordinate and reduce the lack of communication amongst the role players, because ultimately, if there's a lack of communication and coordination, the role players don't know whether or not there's demand. If there's no demand, how much should they produce? Should they order more? Should they maybe not order more? Because that will affect production side as well.
And that is why coordination is very important between these players along the chain, because they must relay the right information, because that will inform the decision made by the other players. Yes, that is perfect. Of course, the promotions that you talked about, you've seen how demand suddenly rises due to promotions, and people want to capitalize on maybe the low prices and so on and so forth. And that was not factored in during the production and so on. And you find that now it will, of course, destabilize the orders along the way. What else? What else? Any causes of the bullwhip effect?
Doctor, if I can maybe just add to my previous submission, I also think the production time contributes to the bullwhip effect, because obviously for us in agriculture, most production takes months to fulfill. So if there's all of a sudden a large spike in demand, it's going to send a bullwhip effect and a massive shortage throughout the value chain, because it doesn't take 2-3 weeks to produce some products. For example, if you're in the forestry sector, maybe it's possible to, if you have budgeted maybe 1 or 2 more stands of forest, that you can maybe utilize, should you predict or forecast that there would be, for example, increase in demand, for example, in December when people get their 13th checks, they're at home, they've taken most of their leave, so maybe, they would want to make amendments to their homes and stuff like that. But in terms of produce, it's not always possible. So production time is also something that can contribute to the bullwhip effect.
Yes, we know that agricultural production is dictated by so many factors, and of course, it is sometimes seasonal in nature. So even if the demand, exists, you cannot just, push production, because it depends on the time and the seasons. So I'll share with you an article on the bullwhip effect, and so that you can read more, and of course the beer game to enable you understand more on the bullwhip effect, some of the causes, and how, of course, those effects can be managed, so that the effect is not highly felt along the supply chain. So let's look at the inventory management, and we ask ourselves, why keep inventory? What are some of the types of inventory? And of course, we have got the different transportation modes and ordering. So normally there are some techniques that are applied when it comes to management of inventory, so that at any given time, there is a reduction of inventories to a certain desirable level. So we have the just-in-time technique, ABC analysis, and then the economic order quantity model. And of course, it is important always to take a stock review. So maybe to begin with the just-in-time technique, what does it entail? just-in-time technique? Who can try? When you talk
Doctor,
about
can it-
just-in-time,
Oh, sorry.
yes?
Doctor, can it mean, could it mean maybe, for example, under inventory, we said we have different items we are managing, for example, the raw materials, the finished produce, what. Could it mean, for example, if it's time for us to have the raw materials processed, could it mean having them done on time as planned? And if it's maybe to distribute of the produce, could it mean us having it achieved in the designed time frame? That is what I think.
Yes, you're almost there. Any trial?
Doctor, as far as I understand, just in time is a technique that Toyota Motor Company uses. It means that everything in their supply chain is timed to when it's needed, and they don't hold any excess stock over. They only keep what is needed for the day on hand, and they don't hold any stock over. So it's a system where you don't have to have huge overheads for storage facilities and everything, because whatever's needed for the day is ordered and is expected to arrive for the day's production.
So this is whereby you only, order the right amount of raw materials, and they arrive at the designated place and the exact time that is demanded, so that you are able to meet the demand obligations. So you don't hold extras, you only hold or request for whatever amount of raw materials that you need for production. So that means that you don't have the excesses in your store, but you ensure that as you place an order, they arrive at the designated place in the right time, just about when you're about to use them or when you're about to utilize those materials. You know, the way sometimes people order for materials and it takes even some days before they are utilized. But for this particular technique, you order for these materials and they arrive at the time when you're just about to utilize them. So basically, it eliminates the costs that we had mentioned. So the storage costs and sometimes even the materials, deteriorating in nature. And also you don't have to hold too much inventory on hand. So avoid having too much inventory. So it's a good technique to enable you just get what you want for that particular moment, and you utilize everything. Do you think it can work? Is it workable?
Very applicable and workable, Doctor.
You think it is applicable? But what are some of the challenges with this technique?
Doctor, I find it not really very feasible, especially in scenarios where, for example, if you have walk-in customers and so on. I think it can only work if you have a kind of business where there is pre-orders are made, for example. Pre-orders are made by the clients, so that you as a supplier, you're also able to place the orders. So the customers have that patience for the product. But if you have the kind of business where it's just like an instant sale, in case there may be delays if you get some delays in the delivery of the raw materials, I feel like you also miss out on sales. So I find it quite risky at some point.
So basically, the assumption is that these materials are available at any time. So when you need the materials or you demand for them, you'll always get them. And everything is flawless in the sense that even the distribution, when you place an order, you will get it at the right time, which is not the case.
Yeah, practically it's not that, it's rare. It's a rare case,
Yes.
so I think it's possible. It's,
Mhm. Yes. Yes, so sometimes you may even lack transportation, or there can be a problem, logistical problem. So you may end up not getting the materials at the exact time when you need them. And sometimes you cannot be 100%, your estimation cannot be 100% correct. So you may have some excesses, or you may have some deficits. So it may work, it may not work. Then we have the ABC analysis. Who can tell us what ABC, those who've done accounting, Those who've done some accounting, what is ABC analysis?
Doctor, it's where we put inventory like according to its importance. So like we arrange it according to like its significance.
Yes, inventory is classified based on their importance. So they are categorized in 3 categories. That is class A, class B, and class C. And these classes are based on their importance or the consumption value. For instance, class A is a high consumption value category, then B is medium, and C is a low consumption value. So as you control the inventory, it varies according to these classes. So for instance, for the high consumption value or high value category, that means that you may need some tight control as you maintain this inventory. And you also need to have some proper recordings and complete records. But for class B, which is not really that important, then it means that even the controls can be slightly, less tightly. And you may also have records in place, but not as good as for class A. And of course, for class C, you have the simplest control systems or mechanisms in place. And sometimes you may not even have the records, or you may have minimum records. So it's about controlling inventories based on their prioritization and how you value these inventories. So the ones which are highly valued, it means that even in terms of economic value, they are of high economic value. And therefore, you must handle them with a lot of keenness, and the security provided must be tight. And you cannot afford to lose such kind of inventories or even allow them to be spoiled or deteriorate in nature. Is that clear? Hello?
Yes,
Are we together?
yes.
Yes, and then we have the economic order quantity. What about the economic order quantity? Anybody who is aware of that model? Anybody? Who can try the economic order quantity? So this is whereby a company or places an order based on their needs. So at the end of the day, a farmer wants to optimize on the order quantity. So, and at the same time, they try to minimize on the cost. So it is maintaining an order that is most cost effective to the company, such that you do not have the extra stock in place, or you do not have less stock in place. But then you have an optimal order that can maintain, the customer service. So, and normally there is a formula for calculating this optimal level of quantity that you desire at any given time. But as you do so, you must consider the annual total cost of inventory and also the cost of handling these inventories or holding inventories. So how much will you incur when you hold the inventories? And what about if you place orders? Sometimes people place orders once so that they minimize on the number of times that they order these costs. But at the end of the day, how much do you spend again when this stock is on hold? So you need to understand or do a cost-benefit analysis. So when you use the economic order quantity, then you are able to identify that optimal order quantity that meets the demand and at the same time minimizes the costs which are related, such as the handling costs and the ordering costs. Are we together? So this normally tries to minimize the holding costs, and it also aims at reducing the excess inventory. So whatever a farm or a business has is what fits their needs. So what best fits their needs is what they have at the end of the day. So, and when you talk about the stock review, so you've seen cases whereby after after some time, a supermarket or a business reviews their stock, or they do some stock taking. So, and you know very well that stock taking is very important. So what are some of the activities they normally do when stock taking, or what do they normally check? Or how does it work? You've seen businesses close shop for a day or 2 days because they're engaged in stock taking activity. So what do they normally do? Yes, Alice?
Yes, during stock count, of course, each item is looked. They look at the different items they have. They look at the quantities remaining for each. Expiry date, maybe for those products that do expire. Those that are damaged. And that helps them to know what to stock more, what not to stock, probably what to do away with. Those stocks that have not moved at all, they maybe decide not to stock them again. Yeah, stuff like that.
So there's a lot of information that they gather during that exercise. So they ascertain the quantity of goods for the different products, whatever is available, vis-a-vis the demand. They check on the expiry dates. They check, of course, those that are damaged or spoiled. And how much should they place, in terms of the orders, and what is it that is not moving? Because you find some stock are just stuck, they're not moving. So in such a case, then you don't need more of such kind of goods. So there's a lot that they can ascertain during that exercise, and that also helps in inventory management. You've heard about the FIFO, the LIFO, approaches. Last in, first out, first in, first out, and so on and so forth. Some of them, they use those techniques also as they do their stock review. So I think that is clear. Some of those techniques are clear. And maybe at your own time, you can read more on them just to understand how those techniques are applied. So we have got some of the inventory costs that we've mentioned. We have the carrying costs. We have got the ordering costs. And we have got the shortage costs. So when you talk about carrying cost, this is the cost of holding an item in inventory. And sometimes it's also referred to as the handling costs. So as you try to maintain that product in the workplace or in the business, of course, there are certain costs that you may incur at the end of the day. We have the storage or the warehousing costs. Sometimes even the spoilage costs, the operational costs. You may need, to engage people even to do a few things to, arrange those inventory, to wipe those that maybe have gathered dust, and so on and so forth. So, and we also have the ordering costs, cost of replenishing the inventory, or the cost that is incurred when you place orders. So, and the reason why you find that people order for extra stock is because they want to minimize on these kind of cost, the ordering cost. So, and as you place orders, of course, there are certain costs such as the cost of communication. You are also bargaining and many other things. So to avoid incurring those costs, you find that businesses or firms decide that why can't we order once in a month, and then we minimize on these costs rather than placing orders every week. But again, this depends on the nature of goods. There are certain goods that, of course, demands that they be ordered frequently. Others can be ordered even once in a year, and they can stay for certain months, especially the durable goods. Then we have the shortage costs, temporary or permanent loss of sales when demand cannot be met. So sometimes you run out of stock, or you ordered less than the demand, what is demanded. So you end up losing on sales because you cannot meet the demand. The market exists, customers exist, but there is a shortage of products. So, and that is why it is important that you establish the economic order quantity, that quantity that is ideal, so that you do not incur or you try to minimize some of these costs. Is that clear? Hello? Are we together?
Yes, doctor.
Yes, so for instance, what happens when the higher of products or there's a higher number of products ordered within a farm or a business? What will happen to these costs? Is there a relationship between the number of products ordered and the costs? Hello? Is there a relationship between the products ordered and these costs?
Yes, doctor, there is. Sometimes you might not necessarily order too much depending on the costs, or in terms of business efficiency, you'll try and maximize the amount of products that you end up ordering to make the cost worthwhile. For example, in our case, as a small agribusiness, we are not going to hire a truck to transport 2 bags of grain to the farm. But if we can, for example, order 6 tons of grain, it becomes worthwhile because with our bakkie, we cannot transport so much in one trip. So then it becomes easier. However, another thing, if we know the seasons that we order our crops and so on, and for example, our animal feed, we always inform them ahead of time, because sometimes if you then order, you'll sometimes wait because sometimes there's a shortage. But if you've told them of your intention of ordering, the co-op will have feed for you based off of you telling them, because sometimes there will be an ordering cost attached to it if you have to wait, because then they have to send out a vehicle to go get it if they might not have.
Mm-hmm. Yes, of course, that is right. And also, if you have more products in store, of course, the cost of handling will go up, or the carrying costs. So at any given time, it is important that they try and manage these costs so that they strike a balance. And that is where now the trade-off comes in when managing inventory. They trade off between these costs, depending on, of course, the nature of the costs and how costly are these activities. So, and I think that is what is explained this diagram. So this is the economic order quantity that any farm strives to achieve. And it tries to do that by balancing these costs, the ordering costs and the carrying costs, which of course will contribute to the combined cost, or the total cost. So if they are able to manage these and get an order that really minimizes the cost, and at the same time enables them to meet the needs of the customers, then that is what they should consider. But then you find that this, economic order quantity, it varies depending on the kinds of products. So, and it changes over time. And therefore, as farms, they need to get the right information. They need accurate information for them to be able to calculate the economic order quantity. And this information is not just collected at a particular time, and it's done over time. So when they have data, overtime data, then they are able to establish the right costs which can be used to calculate or compute the economic order quantity. So again, let's move to the modern and traditional supply chain management, of course, with regards to logistics, as well as the push and pull view of the supply chain processes. So if you look at these, you can see the different cycles that are involved in the supply chain, and the different actors who are involved. Of course, we have got the processes and we have the people managing these processes, the owners of these processes. So if you look at that chain, we are trying to understand the traditional view of the supply chain processes. And the next one is sorry, what is that? So we are trying to understand the traditional view and the modern view of supply chain processes with regards to logistics. So how do you think the traditional supply chain works when it comes to logistics vis-a-vis the modern? What are some of the factors may be considered in a modern supply chain with regards to logistics in comparison to the traditional supply chain? Remember earlier on we talked about the differences between traditional supply chain and modern supply chain. But now with a lens to, logistics, is there a difference between these two in terms of how logistics is managed? Who can try?
Doctor, maybe what I can say about the modern supply chain in concerning logistics, it's, for example, right now, because of the technology, you're able to place an order maybe online and indicate all the details of when you expect the delivery, where you expect the delivery, the quantities. You also find out the prices, all the details concerning the product that you're ordering. Unlike the traditional supply chain, where like the online bit of it was really hard. So probably you needed to move to your supplier physically and then place the order and so on. Then also the modern supply chain, you realize that there is quite a lot of, can I say, bureaucracy concerning the orders, where you have to place the order to the supplier. Maybe they have to invoice, they have to, to make sure that the product is the right one and all that. So you realize that again, compared to the traditional supply chain, you may need quite more time in the modern supply chain. For example, you have to order early enough so that you allow all those activities to take place in order to get your order on time.
So in a nutshell, what you mean is that the traditional supply chain, of course, involves many processes and stages, eh?
Yes.
Yes, unlike the modern supply chain, which is a bit shorter. And therefore, there are certain stages that are bypassed. You don't necessarily have to go through those stages. And then you talked about of course, technology. For traditional, it's more of physical, and they have not adopted certain technologies. So you have to move these products physically, transact physically. But then modern, they have embraced technology and other techniques of managing, inventory and even stock and transacting. Any other view?
Yes, Doctor. I also think that one of the other things that really differentiates the modern and the traditional supply chains is that the modern supply chains really focus on how they can really meet the demands and the needs of the consumer. So they really focusing on how they can further add value and make the product more convenient for the consumer. So, for example, things like cutting up the carrots, washing them, stuff like that, before you as a consumer walk in and buy pre-cut, pre-washed produce, for example, in the market. Whereas the traditional supply chain focus more on standardization of products, making sure it's the same level. It's not necessarily customized to preferences. So, for example, it might be a farmer who just wants to sell his bunches of carrots, but it was just picked. So you're now going to have to decide so it's more physical in that sense. I also think in terms as a result thereof, it brings into question the flexibility and adaptability. Whereas with the modern value chain, they don't necessarily hold a lot of stock on hand. So they've got a more lean production system, especially when you consider the traceability and the communications between the lot and the coordination mechanisms that they have in place. Whereas traditionally, as you've mentioned, it was way more physical dealings with people. So it took a lot more time and it wasn't necessarily as flexible and as adaptable to quickly respond to changes in demand or changes in market price fluctuation. So they couldn't necessarily capitalize on some of the demand aspects of things that where if there was a gap in the market, you could just quickly produce something or produce a bit more to really capitalize on the increase in demand or slow down production. What they had, so they had to try and find ways to sell it. Sometimes they'd have to end up making a loss by selling it at a promoted price just to move the product off of the floor. I also think the concept of sustainability is something that is a bit more focused in the modern value chains, because we are also consumers are becoming more conscientious of what they consume. Is it green? Is environmentally friendly? What are some of the practices that the farmers had on their side? How has it been transported? Consumers are wanting most of the supplies really conform to something that's very difficult, because they're also concerned about the environment in which these businesses operate, and especially because the environment inherently impacts their quality of life as well. So traditionally, the topic of sustainability wasn't necessarily the main focus. The main focus was to make money. So yeah, that's just my submission.
Thank you very much, Anko, for pointing out very important points. Yes, of course, the issue of sustainability. For a traditional supply chain, their focus is mainly to produce and to provide the products to the consumers. But then they don't really take into consideration the needs of these customers. So unlike the modern supply chain that focuses on the customer needs, and they try to improve the value of the products that are delivered so that they satisfy the customer needs. So they understand the needs of this customer. They, first of all, try to understand their needs before they can engage in any production and provision of these goods. So they focuses on the needs of the customers, unlike the others. And as they do that, they also try to ensure that the activities are sustainable. The products can be sustained. So other than the traditional that really focuses on making profit and a profit alone. You've also talked about coordination, and this, of course, you find that the modern supply chains have entered into partnership with other players. There is a collaboration, people, striking alliances and so on and so forth. So in traditional, you find that a few individuals are running the show. So they do not, network and even coordinate these activities, and by doing so, that it means there is likely to be a challenge of the bullwhip effect. So, of course, we've talked about the modern technologies and strategies that are being applied in the modern supply chain compared to the traditional that, of course, used the method or old methods or old ways of doing things. Any other point that you've left out? So for the modern, of course, there's a lot of planning for the activities, and also controls have been put in place, the control measures. So at the end of the day, they try to achieve efficiency and effectiveness. Then we have the push and pull view of supply chain processes. I'm sure you will come across these concepts, push and pull. The push and pull, eh? I know we have
Yes.
the push and pull technology, climate smart, eh? Those who are working on climate smart agriculture. We have got the push pull technologies, eh? But then what do you think with regards to inventory management? What is push and pull?
So,
Justus,
Dr.
Ked.
The push.
Justus? Let's have others try. Nancy, I've not heard your voice today. Nancy?
Doc, that one I don't know, honestly.
Ked, Justus, can you try?
Sorry, doctor, just repeat the question again.
What is the push and pull view of the supply chain processes with regards to inventory management?
So doctor, in terms of the push effect, that will be what your stock, what stock needs to be on hand. And then your pull effect will basically be how much of your manufacturing process is using those products and how much then through the manufacturing process of making your finished goods needs to be ordered.
Mm-hmm. Hanko, you wanted to try?
So, Doctor, the push process is in anticipation, right? We're expecting something to happen or demand to increase or there to be market fluctuations. So all of the processes from production goes through pushing it through the process to get the good in a form that we can then put onto the market. The pull processes is more demand side orientated in the sense that now when there's a big demand, they pull those products through from the production side into the market, into their market spaces that they then can basically get access to the products that they want, or at least in the format in which they want it.
Mm-hmm. So when you talk about the push, when you are pushing something, you are forcing it into the market. So for the push, it means that the products are being pushed through the distribution channels, you know, from these suppliers, the manufacturers, until the products get to the customers. So, but for the pull, of course, these orders are dictated by the customer demands. So this supplier, first of all, establishes the desires or the demand of the customers before they can go ahead and avail those products. So it is led by demand. So it is demand that dictates the products or the orders that will be moved along the chain, the supply chain. So, but for the push, you don't really have information as a supplier, but you are just trying, you're just pushing through these products, trying your best. If at all they will move. But then if you look at between the push and the pull, in the modern world, people have moved away from the push mode to the pull mode, whereby they begin by understanding the customer needs and demands, and then they can go ahead and avail those orders. So they work backwards. But traditionally, of course, the push mode was applicable or was relevant at that point in time, whereby goods were being produced and they were just pushed through the distribution channels without really considering the demands, the actual orders of the customers. But for pull, they must factor in the actual orders of the customers before the suppliers initiate the activities. Even as a manufacturer, they must understand the demand of customers. What is the estimate market? What products or which products do they prefer? And what are their preference tastes? And then they can go ahead and manufacture the goods, which of course will meet those needs. Are we together? So you may find that if you adopt the push mode, then sometimes it might take even a longer time to be able to move those products to the final customers. So there may be also some stocks, just lying along those chains. There could be some delays, there could be blockages, and so on and so forth. But for the push-pull, it tries to respond to these orders of the customers. So you find at the end of the day, there's effectiveness, there is efficiency, because people possess the right information. Suppliers supply based on the orders that exist. As you produce based factoring the orders that have been placed. As a distributor, you of course try to replenish your stock based on the order, and the retailer does the same. So everything is done by order. But for the push, it is just forecast. You imagine that the quantity demanded is a certain figure, and you go ahead and produce such amount of goods. So you may end up, of course, underserving these customers or providing extra goods, and that will again lead to some costs. So I hope that is clear. Is the difference between push and pull clear?
Yes,
and they're
Doctor.
very helpful or very important when it comes to the management of inventory. The kind of approach that is used will also, determine the costs incurred along the chain. And we talked about minimizing these costs as we try to offer the best services. So depending again on the kind of goods and you're dealing with and the market that you're dealing with, you need to identify the ideal approach or mode that fits that specific market. Good. So can we take a break of 5 minutes? Hello?
Yes, Doctor.
Let's have a 5 minutes break. We come back at 4:40. Let's come back at 4:40.
All right, that's fine. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay. Are we back? Where have the others disappeared to? I can see you're only 6, eh?
I don't know, doctor, but I think we can still continue.
Are they preparing for some exam or? Because the number is quite low, or are they familiar with the topic? Maybe they have done it, eh? Previously, and they find that it's a repetition, eh?
Doctor, I don't think it's repetition. I don't know, maybe the internet cut out, maybe there's load shedding issues. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. So let's hope that they will catch up with us, eh? Yes, so we stopped at this point, and we now understand that for push, these players try to produce and push through these products along the chain, while for pull, they are responding to the customer orders. So they don't just undertake activities without proper information, but they already have a picture in terms of what is demanded, and they respond to the orders that are demanded. Then there is also another concept which is important to understand, and that is the customer order decoupling point. So again, when trying to manage inventory, it is important to understand the CODP, the customer order decoupling point. So sometimes it's normally referred to as the point of customization, where the customers again triggers the production activities. And you find that the different activities, of course, must be responsive to whatever customers demand. So customers are the ones who trigger these activities. So they are referred to as the customer order driven activities with a focus to responsiveness, responding to these needs, responding to their requests and the desires. So as you engage in the purchasing, the production, the packaging, and the delivery of these orders, you respond to the customers. So therefore, the products or the activities are specific to the customers. So this node is whereby you find that the activities are no longer driven by, other orders or many players, but they are specific to the customers that have placed an orders, because customers have got different needs, and there are firms that want to address those specific needs. So, and at that point, a farmer must be able to establish the different points where to participate or where to undertake their activities, so that they are able to respond to these orders that are made by the customers. So as they plan for these activities, as you can see on the other side, the planning is driven, and it's planning driven activities, and it is focused on efficiency. They want to minimize the costs at all levels. So as they produce, as they pack, as they assemble, as they deliver the orders, and all these activities must focus on efficiency. And at the same time, they must also focus on responsiveness. So as the products move from this point until they get to the customers, these two concepts must prevail. That is efficiency and responsiveness. So that point that farms customize their activities to respond to the needs of the customers and also try to minimize on the cost is what is referred to as the customer order decoupling point. So it is the customer that triggers the production activities. And therefore, once the customer triggers these activities, the suppliers will respond based on these triggers. And the production or producer will also respond based on the triggers by the customers. Are we together? Hello? Is that clear?
Yes, doctor. Yes.
So at the end of the day, they must understand what to stock and what should be moved to these other customers. Otherwise, if they don't factor in these customer order driven activities, then whatever activities they undertake will be in vain, because whatever products that they offer perhaps will not meet the expectations of these customers. So at the end of the day, they have to understand again the customers. And we've noticed that right from the onset of our discussions that in a supply chain, the most important thing is to understand customers as you respond to their needs. You create value, you add value so that you are able to meet the demands of these customers. So with this kind of arrangement, then you are not just responding to orders placed by a large group of people, but it is customer specific or focused. And I think this particularly works when we are dealing with the larger customers. Don't you think so? Is it possible to, apply this kind of approach, especially when dealing with the small scale customers? Hello? Under what circumstances do you think it is applicable? At what point under what situations do firms use this approach, establish the customer order decoupling point? They can only customize when dealing with large buyers. But for small scale buyers, I doubt if it is cost effective, because you are also factoring in or cautious of the costs, because you want to be efficient in your activities. So for small scale of customers, it might not really work. But I think for the larger scale customers, those who purchase in bulk, it is important, or it may work. Are we together?
Yes, doctor.
So we've
But
said
doctor, I
that.
think
Yes.
I have a little example in the case of this. So, for example, a farmer friend of ours in the Eastern Cape, he has his own registered abattoir on his farm. So in that sense, he's shortened the value chain. However, he sells lambs based off of orders. So he sells a whole carcass at a time. However, if you, for example, order enough from him, it's cost efficient for him to then have the additional expense of cutting the lamb up into the various parts and packing it for you if you order enough. However, if you order like 1 or 2 sheep out of the 30 that he slaughters, he's not going to have the time to really I want to say, package it and do all of that for you. He's more than willing to just give you the whole carcass and you have to do it yourself. So I think in that sense, he's not necessarily willing to go the extra mile for his customer, even though it's a nice service to have. He doesn't necessarily have the time to give attention to it. Whereas if, for example, orders all 30 lambs he slaughters that day, he will go the extra mile, package everything because that's a client he would like to retain.
Yes, but then you also look at what you will bag home at the end of the day. You will make more sales compared to the 2, lambs or even 3. So he's willing to go an extra mile and undertake the other activities. So he is customizing these activities based on even the customer demands or requests. So it is linked to a specific customer order. So if you're trying to establish the CODP, it has to be linked to a specific customer order. Any other example where it works? Or any other situation? But I think, Hanko, you've explained it. Your example is ideal. But does it happen mostly in African countries? Or it depends on the nature of products or goods that are involved?
Yeah, I think, Doctor, what the example Hanko has just given, I'm trying to think so hard in the context of Uganda, because I've not witnessed such kind of a case scenario. But however, when it comes to looking at enterprises that deal with large bulk and maybe a large number of customers, usually there is a farm, there's a dairy farm that I've seen when it comes to supply of milk, because there are these I don't know how I can call them retailers, these guys who buy milk from the farm then come and sell on along the streets in the evening. So now there is a unique way this farm treats these customers who come and buy milk in large or huge quantities. There is a unique way they handle their orders. They handle them in the sense that they are supposed to fulfill their demands such that they still keep such a customer base around the business. So I think that's more or less I've been trying to observe.
And that's why you even find that in organizations, other organizations, those bulk customers, they are even handled differently from these ordinary customers.
Yes.
There's priority kind of services that are offered to them because they want to retain the customers. Because this is somebody who can, drive the profit of an organization within by just transacting, few transactions. But for these small people, you need several of them to transact, even to push the profits.
I think, Doctor, that's why when you go to the banks, there is a way banks there is a section for only for bulking. And you see the type of people who enter there, the way they are handled relatively to us. Because there was a time I was in the bank, I nearly told the branch manager, is this segregation? That person has come to make a deposit, but I've also come to make a deposit. But the way he was quickly handled, he didn't even spend, he was not even in a queue. He spent less time and went back to do his business. So I think this customer or the decoupling point works in that case scenario.
Yes, for you are depositing some small amount of money, that is insignificant. You need several of you to deposit such kind of money. But the guy was, depositing millions and millions of shillings. And that's why he deserves such kind of priority services.
Yes.
Because you cannot afford to lose such a person. Because they are the drivers of the economy.
Yeah, very true, doctor. Very true. But doctor, there is another example that I thought of. In the little town of Staraheim called Eastern Cape, we have got a company called Boardman Brothers. So also they've recently grown very big. They focus more, they're not in agriculture, but they focus more on like cleaning products and so on. And they're also more willing to accommodate specific orders and like how can I say pack it to your order and basically break away from their set amounts of orders that they would necessarily have if you are a loyal customer and you order a big enough quantity to warrant them having the to invest the labor in packing the truck a different way based off of your specific order. So if you order large enough, if you are a bulk buyer, they're willing to break some of the sizing rules. So there are specific quantities that you have to buy in order for them to make it feasible to deliver the truck. So if you also buy big enough, they would also be more willing to assist you in other ways as well as with diversifying the truckload that's coming to you.
And sometimes they even deliver to you, eh?
Yeah, so they deliver all of their goods. They deliver all of their goods if it's a big enough order.
Yeah, so they respond to these customer orders differently. And that is why the focus is on responsiveness so that they are able to meet the specific needs of these customers. So if they make to stock, this is by order, they assemble to order and so on and so forth. So it is important at the end of the day that in the supply chain, you first of all understand the different categories of customers, and then you can then be able to identify the right strategy that would work for these different customers, even when it comes to managing the inventory. I think that is clear. So I will share with you some articles just to read and further understand the topic. But basically, that is all about inventory management and logistics. So the most important thing is that you must understand the trade-offs in inventory management. What do you want to achieve at the end of the day? But then bearing in mind that the customer's expectations, the services offered must be quality, but then you maintain what you need so that you don't incur the extra costs. So the forecasts can work having some data, but then data that is ideal, that is recent can work. You know, sometimes people rely on outdated data. So if you're managing inventory, you need up-to-date, reliable data. But then we have technologies that can also help in the management of inventory and logistics. Could you maybe point out some of the technologies that have really helped in managing the inventory and logistics in an efficient way? Are you aware of some technologies that are currently being used in inventory management?
Prof, I have one example. There's a friend of mine who is an inventory management officer at district local government. So there is a software that it is more or less like some sort of an accounting software that it helps him capture how much inventory is coming in and how much is going on. So I usually see him trying to tally. He tallies that system to know how much is left before he makes orders to their suppliers before they supply. So it helps him understand how much quantity is available for maybe for facilitating particular activities within the district local government.
So that software helps in monitoring the inventory. So at the end of the day, he's able to tell how much has been released out, what is it that is remaining, and the orders that he needs to place. Any other technology?
Doctor, if it's within the same franchise, they have a built-in traceability system that they make use of, obviously called the RFID tag. So basically the barcodes or the QR codes that you see, then basically the warehouse will also be able to track which of their branches, so for example, for Pick n Pay, all of the branches in, for example, Pretoria can be monitored from a central like distribution point, and then they can send stock to each sector based off of how many sales they have, which is also why it's so important that once the stock is sold, the system notifies them how much is left as well.
Yes, that is perfect. Any other technology?
Then Dr.
Maybe that are used by the producers, the manufacturers, the retailers, or even the customers. Go ahead. Mercy, was it Mercy or Alice?
It was Geoffrey, Doctor.
Yes, Geoffrey?
I think before you came in, I was trying to look at these logistical companies like DHL, and I think because when you look at the movement of the commodities under transit, you realize that there was a time one DHL truck stopped around Kampala, and I asked the gentleman, there was something that looked like some sort of I think a mobile, some sort of a mobile gadget that was put on onto the container. So I asked him, what is the use of that device? He told me this device, it has a lot of things that it does. One, it helps my managers track the movement of the goods that I'm delivering to particular places. And then it also takes recordings of the conditions that the goods are under in transit, because sometimes also takes temperature measurements. So I believe this kind of using of trackers in management of this inventory, I think it is also a good technology to appreciate.
Yes, of course, we know that some of the losses can arise out of, human employees. Sometimes you find that you've entrusted a driver with the inventory to maybe deliver elsewhere. But then instead of going straight to that place, they decide to do their own businesses using the trucks or the vehicles. So nowadays, most farms have got these trackers. So they're able to track the driver and the movement of these goods. Yes, Mercy, how does the Google Sheet template work? Maybe you could explain.
I don't know that my background is okay, but their technology, like their Google Sheet template that they normally use, where they have they basically put in how can I call them? They are formulas they put in to show what has come in. For example, the raw materials purchased, what has been produced actually in a coffee factory. Basically, they have what has come in, what did we purchase in raw form, what was processed, what came out. If directly like displaying every transaction, and at the end of every month they are able to reconcile and come to a conclusion.
So it's basically for recording purposes, eh?
Yes.
So they record the transactions that have taken place, eh?
They record the transactions and they are able to give accountability to what came in and what was sold to who did we purchase from this produce, and who supplied the raw material, who did we sell to, what came out, such things.
Okay. That is perfect. I think that could also work when it comes to monitoring this inventory, so that at the end of the day, you are aware of what is in store and how much or the quantity that you should order. Any other technology?
Doctor, there is from experience, I have a produce buying and selling business. So usually when the farmers used to bring in their produce to sell, because I bulk, then also I hoard, actually I hoard, then sell at a particular point when prices have increased. Now, there was a time when I never thought of such a technology of trying to measure moisture content of the produce these farmers were bringing at the warehouse. Now, one gentleman told me just buy a moisture meter that you could use to measure the amount of moisture in the amount of maize these people bring, because some of them do not fully dry, and this will bring your losses. And I remember when Kenya banned maize from Uganda, I was also among the farmers who were the producers who were much affected, because I had nowhere to go, and I realized I did not use that technology. So when I bought a moisture meter, it has helped me to understand the condition of my purchases before I put in storage for the next sale. So I think a moisture meter technology is also good.
I agree with you, because it also minimizes the losses, eh?
Yes.
Because if you realize that the moisture content is a bit high, so you will dry the maize or the beans to a desired level so that you reduce the moisture content. And when it's stored again, of course, chances are very low that you will incur some losses. So you are exporting the maize to Kenya, or the grains?
The grain, because there usually trucks from Kenya that come, then they buy from us. So sometimes I use that opportunity because I don't have enough resource to have a certain kind of infrastructure, maybe like vehicles to transport the maize, the grain their side. So when these trucks come from there, they buy from me at a price that is much more good compared to the prevailing prices in Uganda. So when they came and when they had that, so they had to subject the standards that the Kenyan border was enforcing. Maize that doesn't meet a particular moisture level is rejected from there, and then so I was also among the victims.
Sorry for that, eh? Do you think availing information is also important when it comes to inventory management? Eh?
I think, Doctor, that is very, very important, because if I had gotten access to such kind of very good information, I would have not ended up in such tremendous losses.
Mhm. And any other technology?
Doctor, I had an inquiry. For
Yes.
example, under inventory on besides using the weighing scale, there are people who also use the weigh bridge to track the quantity, the weight of the produce. Is that also applicable? Can it also be a technology?
Using of weighbridge, eh?
Yes, doctor.
Yes, it is applicable, but if only people are sincere, eh?
Yeah,
yes, because sometimes people are not sincere. Let me give you an example. Sometimes I engage in sugarcane production, and I remember early this year I harvested some sugarcane, and then delivered, of course, to a weighbridge. But then at the end of the day, the kind of information I was given really shocked me, because the tonnage was quite low. So recently I was informed that those guys, they had tampered with their machines, such that at every given time, there's at least some 2 tons that they don't declare. So they were caught, eh? But remember, you cannot verify, eh? So they tamper with these machines, and you don't get the exact weight.
No, you see, doctor, for example, I think it depends, because I have seen companies that use weigh bridges, and they have to call the UNBS people to really check the validity of the measurements that these machines are taking. Yeah. But for the 2 tonnage that they told you, they had really done something to the weigh bridge. At least the quantity that the weigh bridge does not notice is around, it's very minute.
Yes,
Yeah.
and you can imagine if you serve almost even 100 customers in a month. And
but what most regulatory bodies
do, that is a lot, eh?
Very, very huge. Then I've also heard of, yes.
Okay, just continue, and then you explain to us the Palladium tool, eh?
Yeah, I have also encountered that system of the Palladium tool. It's mainly used in the accounting department. And what it does, it multitasks, it does so many things. It takes charge of the generating of invoices to clients. It takes track of the inventory still, and it also takes track of the duration of when the commodities have been sold off, and when someone pays back. Yeah.
Yes, and we also have other accounting tools, the ones I was mentioning, like the FIFO, the LIFO, and all that, eh?
Yes,
whereby, you release the goods that came in first, eh?
Yes, doctor.
Sometimes you've encountered cases whereby goods are on the shelves, but then they have expired, eh?
Yes.
Yes, so how do you minimize such kind of, costs, eh? Because that is a cost to the company, and it's also not really fit to the consumers, eh? So you can also use the FIFO, LIFO, the techniques, eh? To manage your inventory. Yes?
Oh, okay, okay.
Yes, Geoffrey?
Now, doctor, about that sometimes goods getting spoiled on the shelves. One thing I've seen with most especially with supermarkets. There is a supermarket that I know. If bread is supplied, because these guys take records of the number of loaves that they are purchasing. But again, there is some sort of an agreement they make with the supplier, the bakery. There is because I see them when a customer, maybe a customer who's very knowledgeable, picks bread from the shelf and looks looks at the date of the bread in terms of its freshness. You realize the customer now says that this bread is not good. So one thing I've seen is the managers of these companies. There is an agreement there they reach with these bakeries, in the sense that these guys come and pick this bread, and they take this bread. I don't know how they convert it into, there's a way they translate it to another material that is of good use to the bakery company. I don't know that kind of arrangement that these companies make. Then I was also thinking of, I've seen there is a company we have in Uganda called Jumia. Now they have managed to install customer relation systems. Now, after delivery of a commodity, when Jumia delivers the product the customer ordered, now on receipt of the commodity, there is a way the system has particular functions that you access, and then you can relay a feedback to the company. Maybe that feedback could be in terms of, maybe the product is not the one, maybe the customer has another complaint. So I think in inventory management, getting feedback, having systems that collect feedback from customers, and also allowing these customers have a privilege to give feedback, I think it is also another technology that improves inventory management.
So information flow should be both ways, eh? It's not one
Yes.
way. So as you supply, you should also expect some feedback. And that's why it begins by, again, understanding these customers, because at the end of the day, they should also provide feedback. Yeah? Whether you met their expectations, whether these products were suitable for their needs or not. Eh?
Yes, doctor.
Yes. For the bread, that is interesting, eh? How they convert. So does it mean that the supermarkets only pay what they have sold?
Yeah, actually, now when bread is taken off the shelf, and the bread which is taken off by the bakery, which is spoiled, now that cost is catered by the supplier. It is not the supermarket. So I'm trying to understand what kind of agreement, that kind of arrangement, do some of these suppliers reach with these customers that they have in place, such that, because the woman was trying to tell me, maybe these guys are trying to preserve they're trying to preserve their public image, because somebody going outside there may not say that the bread from that supermarket is spoiled, but somebody will say the bread from this company that I bought from the supermarket is spoiled. So it is it's the image of the baking company which is tarnished. So I was like, maybe these guys are trying to incorporate systems that try to improve or keep their public image good.
Okay. Good. So I think you can identify a number of technologies that are fit or suitable for inventory management. But by and large, of course, we have stated that there must be a trade-off in inventory management, trying to strike a balance between maintaining the inventory and providing sufficient inventories that can offer quality customer service. So avoid too much inventory on hand, but then also endeavor to satisfy the customers and minimize on the costs. So if at all those techniques meet those qualities, then they can be adopted. So any question at this point? So at your own time, you can also Google for other techniques that are suitable for inventory management.
Yes, Doctor, I have a question.
Yes.
I was wondering how the concept of procurement has a very big impact in inventory management, because I've seen scenarios whereby these procurement officers working together with these inventory management officers, they focus much, especially when they're outsourcing reliable suppliers. They tend to do a lot of background checks on these suppliers that they think they can give them the right material that maybe they could use. I don't know. So I don't know what is the relevance of these background checks on the suppliers that they really want to supply them with material.
Yes, of course, these background checks are very important because, you know, you need to carry out a due diligence. Understand whom you are dealing with. Are they genuine suppliers? Are they supplying genuine products? So quality, of course, must be considered. And then also just, you know, striking a relationship with these suppliers is very important. But then procurement works, I've seen it work especially in private sectors. But
Yes.
public sectors, it is still an issue because of the bureaucracy and the tedious processes and the procedures.
Yes.
I know in Kenya, a government institution, a pen that you can buy directly from a supermarket at even $1, you may end up buying it at $2 if it goes through the procurement process. And I've never understood why the prices, if it goes through procurement, they are slightly higher. Of course, it's because the suppliers argue that payment is not done promptly, immediately. It takes some time for the payments to be made.
That's true.
I don't know if that's how your government institutions also operate. But for
Actually,
the private sector, it has worked pretty well. The background checks, and they also have pre-qualified suppliers.
Yes.
So once they've done these checks, then you are part of their list.
That is very true.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, Doctor, you're talking about pre-qualified suppliers. But one thing I've seen at the district local governments for us here in Uganda, when the public and disposal unit, they're trying to call for bids from some of these suppliers. Some of them get these, they get the bids, they get the contracts to supply. But now the problem comes in when the big people in charge, they give these contracts to these suppliers on condition you pay 20%, because
kickbacks,
yes, the kickbacks, you pay 20%. Now I think the compromise in terms of getting the good quality and delays to supply, I think it is brought by that problem of I think corruption. I think that is corruption in that scenario.
Yes, and that's why nowadays most people are really flocking these procurement classes, because that's where money lies. That's where there is money. But of course, it does help in inventory management. But I've seen it work effectively and efficiently with the private, you know, institutions. The private sector does work pretty well. But then the public, there are still lots of challenges.
Yes,
And
Doctor.
sometimes you find that even an order had been placed the supplier drags his feet because he has not been paid, for the previous deliveries. And that can paralyze operations in an institution. Good. Any other question? Nancy, are you there? Today you've not talked, eh? Or are you in the library? Or are you cooking? And any
Okay, no, doctor.
huh?
I'm hearing the whole conversation.
Are you in the library? Are you cooking, or where are you?
No, only that the whole inventory concept was new to me, so I had to like listen along. Yeah.
Okay. So if at all there is no question, I think we can stop at this point. So I will send you some articles on this related to this topic so that you can read more, and at your own time also just try and Google for more information.
All right,
And
thank
then
you so
you
much,
can
Doctor.
also refer to Chopra. The book that I shared with you, by the way, there's a lot of information. But then this topic is quite wide. It's really wide, because it involves even other calculations. It can take an entire semester just to run through the topic on inventory management and logistics. So we've just summarized the topic. Great. So thanks, guys, and do have a lovely evening.
Doctor, sorry, before we go, just a quick question. So in terms of, obviously, you've mentioned there's quite a lot more in the textbook and there's a lot of more information about it. Are we expected to know the other stuff, or are we only expected to know what we discussed in today's class?
You can be guided by the course outline, eh?
All right. All
For
right.
this
Thank you so
particular
much.
topic, yes, we were looking at the trade-offs in inventory management, production, and of course, consumption forecasts. And then what I want you to go and read is the illustration on the beer game, eh?
All right.
Yes, that will help you understand the bullwhip effect in the supply chains. Eh?
All right. Thank you so much,
So read
Doctor.
more on the beer game. What is it that they were looking at? And what led to these effects, and how did they manage the bullwhip effect?
All right.
Then, of
Thank you so
course,
much.
the use of technology in managing inventory. So I've told you that try and read more on other advanced techniques or the emerging techniques that are used in inventory management and logistics. Of course, we've mentioned some, but then you need to go and read more on that.
All right. Thank you so much, Doctor. And then just finally, before we go, in terms of our term project submission, we've now agreed that the due date is the 4th of
Yes,
November.
yes.
All right.
Of November,
and then
yes.
in terms of that submission, do we submit our presentation to you as well the same day as the written component? And where do we submit? Do we submit by email if we are complete, or do we
No,
submit
I think
it?
I'll create a link on ClickUp where you can send the project work. Eh?
All right, thank you so much, Doctor. And then I just wanted to ask, will we be presenting live, or do you want us to narrate our PowerPoints just so we stick within a fixed time period?
I think we agree that because of time, the time constraint, we may not really find time to present.
Okay, so we'll just send the slides to you and the written component.
Just send the document, the Word document.
Okay. All right.
Send the Word document, yes. I think Alice also inquired about that.
All right,
Alice.
that's fine.
Yes. So please just send the Word document.
All right, that's fine, Doctor. Would it be possible to have that link created on ClickUp so that the groups who are finished can just submit our things to you so long, if
Okay.
possible?
I will
All right.
avail the link by tomorrow.
All right, thank you so much, Doctor. I think that's all
Okay.
for now. I think the only other question is the results of the CAT2, but I'm assuming we'll probably get it sometime next week.
Yes, you will get them next week.
All right, thank you so much, Doctor.
Good. Geoffrey, do you have a question?
No, I was just smiling. The cat.
You are smiling, eh?
Yes.
I can imagine the smiles, eh? Ked, Justus?
No questions from our side. Thank you, Doctor.
All right. So then have a good evening, eh?
You too, Doctor. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much, Doctor.
Thanks.